Hi guys, I'm Miss Crystal. Welcome back to the Miss Crystal podcast. I'm super excited because today I not only have a Grammy Award-winning mastering engineer, but specifically my mastering engineer for my music. So I'm excited for the excuse to kind of highlight not only this person's accomplishments, but also just try to pull out some nuggets of knowledge that we can pass along to everyone who has music careers and makes music. So today I have Reuben with Lurssen Mastering, and Reuben, like I said, is an award-winning mastering engineer, but he is also a sound design enthusiast and innovator, and we're going to get into all of that in today's interview. So I'm going to bring in Reuben.
Hey, Miss Crystal. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you got it. Now, we chatted for a moment before we started, but I didn't realize your shirt. What's going on with that? I love it.
Oh, yeah, eyes up here. This is this is a band, Halls of the Machine, and this is the kind of the logo that went along with the album artwork. So I have a T-shirt. But
well, now let me get
yeah.
this straight. You're wearing these T-shirts. So if I sent you a Miss Crystal T-shirt, and because you do my music, does that mean you're gonna wear my T-shirt?
I don't know why I haven't had one sent yet. I would love to.
All right, we're making a note of it. Very cool. Well, where I want to start is with all what I like to call the sexy stuff about just the types of artists that you've worked with, because you not only work with sound design for independent musicians, but you do soundtracks and you work with the big name artists as well. So in the realm of kind of the sexier stuff, you have done "Happy" by Pharrell Williams, which I thought was amazing. I think that was like the biggest song of the entire year and probably still is everywhere, which was very cool. But you've also worked with the likes of Bruno Mars, Incubus, Kid Cudi, Skylar Grey, and Boyz II Men. Now, little funny side story, that was probably what brought us together, ultimately.
No kidding.
And I say that because back in 2017 when we met because one of my friends, who is an attorney, but also the manager for Boyz II Men, introduced me to you.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we got our start back in 2017. And since then, obviously, you've worked on additional records. But, kind of where I want to dive in, just more out of curiosity, is I know what the process is like working with you and the company that you work for as far as giving notes and what the process is like and what the communication is like as an independent musician. But my question is, for a bigger artist, let's say for Bruno Mars, what does the process look like? Who are you typically dealing with when you're like, hey guys, here's a version of the master? Who's giving you notes on what needs to be fixed or who approves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Sometimes there's many chefs in the kitchen with sometimes conflicting notes. Sometimes it's just one person. Sometimes it's the producer. Sometimes it's the mixing engineer. Sometimes it's the artist. Pretty rarely it's the label. Usually people would think that the label would weigh in more on notes for a mastering engineer. Generally speaking, it's usually the artist, the mixing engineer, or the producer. Sometimes that's all in one person, and sometimes it's many people. But it can come from any of those types of people, and generally it doesn't actually matter. What does matter is understanding who is providing the notes and what their level of understanding in terms of what we can provide in this process is. So sometimes if it's a mixing engineer, we have a very tight-knit kind of understanding, or maybe a relationship that has spanned some time. There's a unspoken understanding on both sides in terms of, there's almost invisible communication or a shorthand that's developed. Whereas if I'm dealing with an artist for the first time, maybe they're kind of new, they don't really understand the terminology, they don't understand what is possible in mastering, or what's a mastering note versus a mix note or a production note. I'd approach that conversation or email dialogue back and forth much differently. So I think the first step is kind of understanding who you're dealing with and how to best serve them, all the things considered in that.
And so if it does include maybe not the label, but if it's the producer or someone else on the team that you're kind of dealing with, how often do people demand to be in person during the mastering process, or are people pretty lax and they're willing just to do it virtually?
It's changed over the years. When I started about 15 years ago, pretty much every day was attended. Everybody wanted to be there in person. It was more of what was just expected. In fact, when the phone rang, instead of saying, hey, do you want to attend or not, it was just almost assumed if you're in town that you'd want to, and we'd look at the next date available on the calendar and we'd block that date out. And now it's just changed into a much different thing. Again, 15 years ago, we were receiving FedEx envelopes every day and sending them out every day with hard drives, data DVDs, and data CDs with the music on it. And now it's all just FTP back and forth. So that cuts down the need for somebody to attend. There's many reasons why somebody might want to attend if they're in town, first off, because we work with people all over the world and certainly out of the state. So it's not always possible. And of course, with COVID, it's only changed that even further. But if somebody wants to attend, it's really great, actually, because it means that I can actually have some company. And it also can guide the process a little bit. It can make sure that we stay on the paved path a little bit, or at least we understand what that path could be. But most of the time, if you're an experienced mastering engineer, we like to position ourselves in a place of where we can be trusted by who we're working with, and sometimes that trust is like relinquished to us temporarily until they can hear what we send back to them. So attending or not attending is becoming more of a thing where it's not so important, because the thing is that in order to hear something accurately in our room, it's a new environment for whoever we're working with. They've never heard these speakers before. They've never sat in this chair before, hypothetically. And if they can hear it back home in an environment that they are familiar with, it's going to close that gap. They're going to really understand what they're hearing more accurately because they're familiar with that environment. So it's kind of advised, actually, to have them listen to what we do in an environment that they're most familiar with. So that just kind of makes it a little more easier for unattended sessions. Or what we're doing actually more and more now is doing virtual attended sessions, where we'll do a Zoom and an Audio Movers link, so they can hear the audio just the way we're hearing it, just the way we're processing in real time. And we can have a back and forth dialogue, on Zoom. So it's bizarre. It's almost like when you're doing these sessions, you kind of forget that the person's not in the room with you. It's as though they are.
Yeah, but it's a little bit more fun, to your point, right? You have someone there, fun for the artist, of course. If I was there, I'm like, just hearing it through the big speakers, having that experience, a lot more fun, definitely, than maybe listening through, same place that I would for anything else. But at the end of the day, it's about just getting that final end product that you're happy with. And, you can accomplish that without actually being in person. But, my producer, that Orko, and I were talking recently about just our process with our mixing engineer, for the same reason of just when we go back and forth and we're typing out notes at 1 minute and 15 seconds, we want the snare down. I mean, that's all fine. You can get the mix to where it needs to be, but it just would be a lot more fun, and we feel like maybe even the mix could be better if we were there in person, living in that moment. So I think it translates for both the mixing and mastering process.
Absolutely. And when you change one thing, sometimes you have to change 10 things to achieve that one thing. It's not so simple as just taking down the snare, hypothetically. If you write that in an email, it could look very simple, like that's the only thing to do. But when you do that, you might end up having to shift things around so it all makes sense and works. And something like that is multifaceted. It takes many steps all at once. So having somebody in the room, or at least listening as you're doing it, can certainly be advantageous. But generally speaking, this is a very misunderstood process in mastering. So when somebody tells you a note over email, it could be that they're asking for one thing, but a good mastering engineer will be able to size that up, inhabit their perspective. And it could be that doing exactly verbatim what is said in that note might not be the thing to do to get everybody happy. It could be something much different. So that just comes with experience and doing this for a long time. You begin to kind of realize those patterns and kind of develop that sixth sense.
Yeah, and guys, I mean, for you watching, if you create music, there's also a learning process, right? Reuben noted this earlier. And just to say that, maybe right out the gate, there is a way that you have to learn in the styling, right? Because, for example, if I send him something, I go, I really want to maintain the integrity of the bass, and I want it grungy and messy, and don't let the vocals pop out, or vice versa. If he knows that kind of about me and my style, I think that's probably going to help as far as the product that he gets back to me.
Yeah. And notes like that paint a very, very clear picture, for a mastering engineer, generally speaking. It's not really talking about so specifically where that bass needs to sit, but it's more the vibe and character of that bass. And there's many ways I can realize that vibe with, saturating to compression and digging into compression with EQ to get that weighted, kind of dirty bass, and at least maintain it or just emphasize it further.
Right. So let's talk real briefly about some of the soundtracks that you have done, which some are very recent. So You nailed Game of Thrones, the Despicable Me movie series, right? So that was like 1, 2, and 3, Pitch Perfect, and then more recently, The Queen's Gambit, which personally, I love that show. And I realized that you were the one that had done the mastering after I'd gotten through the show. I was like, holy shit, here we go again. So anything you can share about even that show specifically, the process, anything that stood out to you?
Well, sometimes a lot of times we'll get the music in before we see the show, and it's not necessary that we necessarily see the show when we're working on the music, because the music has all the emotion, it does all the talking for you, generally speaking. There are some cases where it's kind of fun to know what the music goes with, but generally speaking, you don't need that. The thought process it's the same with anything. It doesn't matter if we're working on hip hop, metal, orchestral music. It's the same process. It's sizing up what you're provided as a mix, feeling the intent behind it, feeling the musicality into it, and feeling into it so you can extract all of that out through mastering and only take step forwards, not step backs. So the idea is ultimate connection with that recording once we're done our process, so that the fans can be as connected as possible. And that can mean a million different things, depending on where you start and where you end. And it's that's our job, is to extract that. So when you're done, there's just nothing in the way from you enjoying that piece of music.
Now, when it comes to film production, right, so we have the music, the scoring, original compositions, licensed stuff, right, so there's a lot that goes into just what songs are placed into a movie, but as a final step, there's also sound effects, right, so we might have a door slamming, and so they superimpose the door slamming. Do you oversee all of that as well, or is it just the main songs?
Not at all. So our end of it is just the soundtrack release for these films and TV shows. So what ends up on Spotify, iTunes, all the streaming platforms. Occasionally songs will also be feathered back into the film or TV, but less so the score, because the score is generally mixed not for stereo but for 5.1 or even Atmos, Dolby Atmos, which is a immersive format. And then for the soundtrack release, it'll be remixed or summed to stereo, which is a secondary process. So what is then mixed goes to two places. It goes to us for the stereo release, but it'll also go to the dub stage for it to be weaved and mixed into the film or TV show, which means it's not being mastered and it's in 5.1 or Atmos. So it needs to be then mixed in with the sound effects and the Foley and all of that. So different path entirely.
Yeah, so, but in other words, you'll take care of main songs, but as far as little, special effects here and there, that's not what's sent to you. That's a different kind of process.
Yes, that's for the film and TV release outside of the soundtrack release. Yeah.
Got it. All right. So other than soundtracks, one that I forgot to mention that I just loved was you did G6 by Far East Movement. That was like my favorite song forever.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
Everyone's favorite song forever.
Yeah, that was from a while ago. That was a big hit though.
Yeah, when you're in the studio, because I'm familiar with a little bit of your process and the time and this and that, but I'm sure there's some music that comes through other than mine that you just absolutely have so much fun with, because you have to just be in that energy space, I would think. If it's a high energy song, a club dance beat, that you kind of have to be in a certain mindset versus something that was more down tempo, for example.
You do. You have to match it. So you have to show up every day ready for whatever comes across your desk. And if you're working on high aggressive hip hop or pop or high energy music, you have to meet that to do your best work. In my opinion, it's better if you meet that energy of that music just where it is. It means you have to bring it. If you don't have it that day, you still have to be able to show up and do good work. But I find that if I prepare myself every day and keep my energy up in life, that I'll be able to meet that head on, and that's where the magic happens. And I think any musician can relate to that. If you're even a session musician, you're just feeling really on that day, you're going to have a better performance. And you can probably still nail it if you're not quite there, and you'll still do really good work. But if you're showing up every day just with your fingers on fire or whatever it means, it's going to come through you, and you're going to just nail it, and it won't even be an effort. It's just going to hit the target easily because you're putting that into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess kind of if we were to talk about star-studded moments, because I'm sure it's pretty amazing the first time you have an opportunity to work with some of these artists. I don't know which of you are fans, but if you are a fan of any of the artists, I think that'd be pretty exciting. So when, for example, you're asked to remaster Metallica's albums or any of their works, how does that feel?
Well, I try not to put myself into a starstruck place, because you can psych yourself out very easily. And I kind of learned that early on in my career, is just if I'm working on a high profile project, it's the same mindset as if I'm working on a project that people don't know about. You know, it's the same. What I can do, my limitations or lack thereof, is the same. You know, so I try not to focus in on anything else except for connecting with the music. If I'm in my head thinking about, well, what will these people think? Are they going to like what I do? And all these other things, that's just distraction from me doing the best job. So I enjoy it for the other reasons. Once it's out in the world, once it's approved and done, and I can enjoy it on Spotify, that's when I actually enjoy the music on a different level as kind of a fan. But when I'm working on the music, all of that goes to the background, and I'm just focused just on what's coming out of the speakers.
Yeah, and it seems like you're very much in the moment. You know, you're not checking the clock. You're not, I mean, you seem to be incredibly passionate about what you do, and that probably comes through. And that's probably why you've, you know, just continued to kind of build. And I mean, you know, I mentioned at the beginning of this, you won a Grammy. You won a Grammy back in 2010. So here we are all these years later, and you have quite the resume that will just only continue to grow. But a question that I would have is, well, if, you know, me or someone else was watching this and wanted to be you, wanted to become a mastering engineer, what's that first step that they should take? Should they be the coffee person in a studio? Should they volunteer? I mean, what's the first step for them?
That's a very, very good question. I think it's different this year than it's ever been before. Than I might have a different answer 5 years ago. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would say, okay, well, maybe it might be a good idea to start picking up coffee at a studio. But the world has changed so much, and there's many people that offer services like this. There's many people setting up shop at home. Work from home solutions have certainly grown through COVID. So it's a really, really good question where to start if you want to get into this. And there's a lot of really good information online. There's a lot of really bad information online. There's a lot of really good guidance and not so great at the same time. So it's difficult to navigate because there's so much information out there, and the mentor-protege relationship has kind of fallen by the wayside. It's very, very rare to find somebody that's willing to invest time into training you, and it's pretty few and far between. I was very fortunate starting out as a teenager that Gavin took me under his wing and showed me the tools of the trade and kind of mentored me from when I was very, very young. And he had that also with Doug Sachs, so there's a bit of a lineage there. So I'm learning stuff that he learned from Doug through him. I'm learning stuff that he learned himself just being on the job every day, and then I took it from there early on. And you know, you discover any engineer that does this every day, you start to see patterns, realize things that nobody can actually even teach you. You have to just kind of learn it from yourself, because there's no language for this stuff. It's just an inherent understanding that's developed over a long time, just like anything else. That's I suppose art. It's something on that level. So to really learn this, you just have to do it for so long. You have to do it and forget about the length of time and the amount of hours. You know, I mean, the amount of projects that we've done, it's just become a wash because we've been doing it for so long. It's countless. We've heard every type of mix in the world, every type of mix, every shape and size something can come through. We've heard pretty much. So we kind of know what to do no matter what comes across our desk. It's inside of us. It lives within inside of us, and we can put that forward every day. So in order to learn that, it just takes time, perseverance, working on as many things as you can, always be working. And the good news is that there's so much music out there ready to be worked on. I mean, I think I said this the other day, in the 70s, there was just a few hundred records put out a year. And now there's 40,000 songs put out to Spotify every day. That's so much music. So there's enough music for everybody to work on. And I think that these different services like Sound Better are popping up, also owned by Spotify, that are allowing people to collaborate online and, you know, pipe things back and forth. And hey, you need this done. Somebody is available to do it. It's just going to allow people to continue to make music and harness their abilities in all these areas. And I think that you know, the cream will rise. You know, people that take it seriously, that continue pushing forward, even though it's a very difficult industry to break into and to sustain oneself. The people that continue to work, they're the ones that'll last, and those are the people that will probably end up working more.
I have a unique opportunity through the clients that are signed with my law firm to kind of be that mentor for them. And so when sometimes a question like this would come up for any aspect of the entertainment industry, how do I start? It's just kind of like, you know, to your point, just start. You're only going to learn if you do it. and you'll get better over time. All you can do is get better. And there's people that will happily accept your services for free if you just need to kind of test different genres and do this and that. And so, I would definitely say, even from my own personal experience being a musician, and, in order to get my voice out, I learned production. I learned how to produce because producers couldn't hear anything that I was doing. And so, don't wait. If you don't have a mentor, that's okay. Just start. And then at some point, you probably will find someone who can help and guide you.
Or many people, there's the internet is becoming the new mentor, and there's all these different, all these different platforms like Mix with the Masters and Produce Like a Pro, where there's really vetted, really talented mentors out there that have the pedigree and the experience to properly do it. There's also a lot of people out there online that say they have the pedigree and experience, but they don't at all. So you got to watch out for that. We're seeing a lot of that more and more. But there are certainly, the established platforms of mentors that are out there sharing the information. Those are excellent resources. And then, like you just said, you get up there, you get on your computer, on your Pro Tools, and you start trying things. And then you try it and you get as good as you can for that day. You leave it alone for the next day and you come back to it and you try to beat yourself. And then you realize what it took to then beat yourself. And then you start developing these paths in your mind to say, okay, if I go down this way, it's going to end up here. If I go down this way, it's going to end up here. So actually, it was better in this case, and maybe I'll do that on the next project when this sort of thing comes my way again. So that's why nobody can teach you this type of thing overnight. It takes a long time to really learn it, and to you have to experience all of that. You have to kind of fail a million times and get back up and realize what the solution was. That's really it.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that you are an audio software enthusiast and innovator. You have done a collaboration through Lurssen Mastering with IK Multimedia, and this is, as I understand it, mastering software. So tell us a little bit about that and explain what it does.
Yes, so Gavin and I, we partnered with IK Multimedia, and we developed a mastering console, virtual mastering console that's modeled after the console that's right behind me. This is the console that we use every day. We have two of them, two clone analog consoles, and they're designed in a very musical way, and they can be switched up depending on what type of mix comes our way. But we found that over the years, we approach things in a particular way. We end up patching certain pieces of gear into others in particular pieces, in particular order, depending on what the arrangement is and how it's mixed. And through that, we found that we could develop that into software. Because this is let's face it, this is a very misunderstood process. It's very esoteric. People are confused by it. Even mixing engineers to some degree are confused by the mastering process. So what we wanted to do was create a tool, a very easy to use, intuitive tool that was kind of like Instagram to audio. You put it on, you throw it up, and it kind of informs your decisions. So as you're using it, it kind of restricts you from bowling a gutter ball. It kind of keeps you on the straight and narrow, but in a musical way, and tells you what to twist next. And people love it. In fact, people they mix their album or their single, and then they'll throw on the LMC just for their client, not as part of their mix necessarily, but just as a temporary kind of version to show their client what mastering will do before they send it to us. And a lot of times we're seeing that we'll get the mix and also the temporary mastered file that's gone through our process. And that's just been a really useful tool for a lot of people. And then, of course, sometimes people can't afford to use us, but they need to also deliver results. So it's been great for that. The other cool thing is that it's on the iPad and the iPhone. So you can be mixing your project in your studio, and then you might want to throw on the LMC mastering plugin, dial in a setting, get happy with that. But then you might want to take it out to your car, and you can export the setting and download it to your iPad or iPhone, do some fine tuning in your car, save those settings, and put it back to the studio, eliminating the car test.
Well, there you go. I know about that.
Totally. So you can actually do the fine-tuned final touches anywhere. You can go to a nightclub and put it on the PA if you want. So it takes the mastering process out of the studio too, and kind of closes that gap.
Wow, that's pretty cool. All right, well, let's get a little more cerebral for a moment and let's talk about Dolby Atmos. You explained this to me a little bit. So on the website, it says it's basically putting you inside the song in a spatial way. And when you told me about it, you go, it's about maintaining correlation and balance. So in the most simplified way possible, explain basically what this is and what your involvement with it was.
Sure. Well, Dolby Atmos is an immersive format that has been around for quite some time, specifically for film and TV, but now is being more and more adopted for music. In fact, Apple has mandated only last month that they are going to be pushing Atmos to the forefront. In other words, if you have an album that's released in stereo and Atmos, and you're a subscriber to Apple Music, the Atmos component will be the first thing that you hear ahead of stereo, which is a very, very big move. So what it is it is immersive audio, and it's channel agnostic. So when we're working in stereo, we're mixing to left and right. Left and right, we're panning things, and we're mixing to a channel, right? And all our processing and mastering can then be put on that channel, on the left and right channel. We can enhance it. We can do all of this processing further on the channel. And then you can break it out to the familiar surround formats that are channel-based. 5.1, 7, 2.4, 5.1 meaning you have 5 speakers around you, and the 0.1 is a subwoofer, but a discrete subwoofer, meaning that you can put, you can pan or you can place content specifically on that channel subwoofer versus a crossover, which would be a subwoofer on a a stereo system, which is you can't discretely put something in the sub. You can just emphasize or place something in that area of the frequency spectrum, and the subwoofer will represent that, but it's not discrete. It's part of the stereo feed. So then you can just get more and more wild with your speaker configuration. You can do 724. 7 means 7 around you. Now you've added side speakers. The 2 meaning 2 subwoofers, 2 direct left and right subs, and then 0.4 means 4 channels above you. And then you can just keep adding more and more speakers. And then the reason for these channel agnostic formats is that there is no set standard with these immersive formats. So Dolby came along a while back and said, we're just gonna throw away these channel channel-based formats and go to a channel agnostic format, meaning that there is no channels. There's just an XYZ coordinate in space. You're basically panning to an XYZ coordinate in space.
I think you told me it's mathematically perfect. Is that right?
I'll get to that in a second. So you're mixing to this format. You can do it in film and TV, and that's what you'll be hearing if you're going to a Dolby theater or you're set up at home for Dolby Atmos. You can actually monitor through Dolby Atmos speaker configuration. And then all that information is encoded and then decoded depending on what speaker configuration you have in your listening environment. You can also listen in binaural, which is going to be a stereo fold down of this spatial content, and that's what you'll hear on the Apple Store currently. So getting to the mastering side of this stuff, it's very, very difficult to master something when you don't have a channel to put it on, because there is no channel. So our understanding of mastering is we're processing on the channels, whether it be stereo, which is the primary work that we do up until, well, we'll see what the future holds, but that has been the primary way people listen to music is in stereo for a long, long time. So we're putting the channel, we're putting the processing on the channel itself. Very simple to do. When you have a channel agnostic format, there is no channel to put anything on. So what do you do? Where do you put the processing? How do you master this stuff? And so what I developed maybe about 2 years ago is a process which I refer to as the phantom bus process, which is a way to process music globally in a channel agnostic format. And the way we do it is very technical, but what we do is we fold down all of the content to mono. And then we use that mono fold down as the engine to drive the processors. Because when you fold everything down to mono, now it's one thing for all your dynamic processors to be triggered off and sidechain off. So if you didn't do that, if you try to put compressors across every single channel feeding into this channel agnostic format, you'd have a bunch of correlation issues. Compression would be affecting or be pumping on a kick drum much different than it would be on a vocal, and you'd have all this loss of correlation if you try to dynamically process it. But if you fold all the signal down to mono and have all your compressors compress off that one singular thing, then you're maintaining your correlation. But we can take it even further, because we can take the output of all of that, fold it back again down to mono in real time, and have that next mono fold down be the thing that then triggers all of the next dynamic processes in your chain. So you can do serial processing, you can do all the same things that we do in stereo or any channel agnostic or channel based format, but now in channel agnostic formats like Dolby Atmos or Sony 360, these new formats, but achieve all of the same things that we do in mastering, but in this new world, and it is mathematically perfect.
Very nice roundabout. So, as far as the consumer experience, right, because we're talking about Dolby being in theaters, but, you know, this is something at some point, either now or in the future, and you can tell me where it's at. I can go get some headphones, listen in this way, and is it supposed to be a superior listening experience for the user?
Well, that's a really good question. Superior is open to interpretation. And it could be that some projects are better in this format and some projects are not as good. It really, in my opinion, it depends on how that project was produced. Was this project originally produced for stereo and then is then being repurposed for immersive or surround or spatial audio? That's what Apple is now deeming it. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on the arrangement. It depends on the intent of that production. Now, if you're producing for this format and you're an artist and a producer in the studio and you're painting on this canvas, it's going to be a much different process altogether, because you're really producing from the get-go and painting on this in a different way. So my experience so far is the projects that are specifically produced for this format are going to shine a little brighter because it's a straight shot to that and it's being thought out just that way.
Right. Well, as far as, for anyone who would be interested in kind of, following you, the projects that you are mastering, I don't know if this is something you'd be sharing in the future as far as just your interest in this area, but also your contribution to the different things that you are working on. If someone wants to follow you, where can they go?
Yeah, well, we have a YouTube channel that we have a bunch of content talking about what we do every day, different techniques, philosophy, all things to do with mastering, and that's Lurssen Mastering's YouTube channel, so it's easy to find. And then you can also follow me on Instagram. Reuben Cohen 1111 is my handle, and on Facebook. So we're easy to find. Just type in our names, and you can find us.
And on a final question, this is something that, at a point of curiosity for other people who work in the entertainment industry, who work very long hours and might experience different levels of fatigue, what's a takeaway that maybe you could share to someone else who also does music production, mixing, mastering, that kind of thing, as far as ways to stay your absolute best health-wise? Any little tip that you might share from your personal life and experience?
Yeah, getting in good rhythms, I like to make sure that I get enough sleep, make sure that I eat on time. It's so easy to not eat when you're trying to finish a project. You're like, all right, well, I'll eat in a couple hours and put that off. But it's important to. You'll do your best work if you keep your levels high and balanced and feel good every day. You'll do your best work. So everybody's different. Everybody has different bodies. And you just have to kind of know yourself and know how far you can push yourself before you start getting to that place of diminishing returns, right? So
that's right. We need that mathematical perfection in our lives and decision making, right?
Well, I try my best. I think we all just try our best, and so far so good.
Well, very good. So guys, thank you very much for joining us, Reuben. I appreciate you coming on our show. And then, hey, I'd love to check in with you again at some point in the future just to see what you're up to, what developments have happened. So I appreciate you being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I'd be delighted. Let's plan for that for sure.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we have for you today. Be sure to listen on Spotify as well as Apple for the actual podcast, upcoming episodes. But of course, we have other content that we release on this channel, Top Music Attorney, where we're helping you with your music careers, helping you to understand your music business and really getting you to that next level. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you on the next one. I'm Miss Crystal. Bye.